Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Cathode Ray Podcast. My name is Lewis, and I'm joined by my friend Steve. How you doing, mate?
Hey, Lewis. We're back, and I'm feeling good. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. We had a little break. There's lots of stuff going on. I know for you, you had snow and other things keeping you away. I had some work, so I'm happy that we had a little week off. We're going to release this one on the regular schedule, and we're happy to be back. And we've got some stories. And I guess after the last episode where we were with Bob and the LCD and the whole production, that, okay, we're just back to a regular good old Cathode Ray podcast. We talk about what we do, a little bit of CRTs, and have a good time.
Yeah, I think it was a good time, to let that episode go. It was a good long one with Bob. It was an awesome opportunity to have him on there, and really funny that we could just all around confirm the kind of crappiness of this earliest LCD PVM for at least gaming purposes. It definitely has its set and piece of history, but yeah, it's not. We confirmed that it's not really worth pursuing as something to use for gaming. Probably one of the worst options. Yeah,
right. And I would say it was you term the phrase well, that it's a part of history. That yes, it happened. The only reason you would really want it is because it's a Sony LCD, a bit of histories, the missing link in between or something, but not for anything practical, as you say.
Yeah, I don't. I'm still just gonna try to find like a bracket to put it on something and either hang it up as a background piece, I guess, in the wall or something. Because, like you said, it's not really, other than just like, hey, look at it, and it's cool that it works. You don't. Yeah, there's so many better options. I mean, I know that, especially with LCDs, you can still find a lot of those, all over the place. Is just. It's not something that is rare.
Right, because I'm even thinking, because I'm using, my monitor right here, it's an LCD, it's an old Dell one, it's still square, 5x3 or 4x3, whatever you want to call it, and it's amazing, and it's LCD. It's not like all LCDs are crap, but this is very late model LCD compared to the first that Sony were making.
Yeah, I mean, this is 2006, man. That's still like a pretty long time ago in the thoughts of electronics. That's a lifetime. So thankfully things have gotten better with that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to work on that, and
you did a good job of putting the screen on camera, like the way that you centered it nice. It was really easy to edit your footage. It was all right in the center, and you did a good zoom, and I was really impressed with that. So good work to you, Steve.
Well, yeah, thanks for working on it. What I think that, because I kind of committed to doing this, but I'm going to try to take my time a little bit. I want to put it one last just send off for this thing, and the majority of that is not going to be what we've already shown. I'm going to just hook it up next to a PVM that is a 13-inch probably, that's similar to that one, kind of. I have one that I have in mind, and then I'll just run it in series, and then I will, so I have a 13-inch, and then I've got one 8-inch, and I'd like to just to have them sit next to side by side on each other and try to shoot some footage of the different way it looks, because when I was filming those segments on that, at least after repairing it, the 240p looks really good when you're filming it, at least, but then like the 480i looked pretty awful. But it was strangely interesting how the whole thing turned out. But there will be one last thing where I'll try to do that comparison left for everybody.
Good one. You gave me an idea just now, which I didn't test, because I wanted to also mention, well, I've got my follow-up as well, which is a video about the OLED PVM, which I finally put out. And that monitor was from 2011, and it's the next generation. Sony moved on, many more years of research and technology. And that screen, I can say, is, well, I said it in the video, fucking tremendous. It looks amazing. It's a deep blacks, beautiful matte screen, super quick response rate, and it's a great screen. And sorry, the thing that you made me think about is because I was commenting to you that if you look at my OLED video really closely, I've got a shot with a BVM CRT and the OLED PVM. and they're both coming out of a mister. The CRT comes out of analog. HDMI goes from to the OLED. And looking at the footage, I noticed that the PVM was 2 frames behind the BVM when I went on a 60 frames frame by frame basis. And we did the lag test, and we saw that PVM only had like 6 milliseconds. And what I think in the end it was is that the mister output is not perfectly synchronized between HDMI and analog. I suspect that was the only conclusion I could come to. And if that's not the case, then something else is fucked up somewhere. Yeah. But you gave me the idea that what I should have done is run analog into the BVM and then out of that into pass through. I forgot pass through basically, which I could have. Yeah, I should have done somehow.
Well, it's going to be more convenient for what I'm attempting to do because I'm using, the bad thing about talking about the PVM that you worked on, the OLED, is the best thing you're looking for there is HDMI. So actually using the mister is smart because then you've got a way of just sending it through and over to it. Now, yeah, obviously there was something going on there, but it's easier to do it like that. Whereas with my setup, I only can use analog. So the easiest thing to do is to just put up my analog to SCART input. One end probably I will put that on the CRT end and then feed that out of that into the PVM that's the LCD. And then set up and just take some shots of them and see. And then that's also what I was wondering too. If technically the lag is so bad on that LCD, would it eventually get to the point where it was noticeably different? I don't understand how if you keep that lag going, if you let it run in a cycle the way I was talking about having set up, would the LCD screen eventually lag itself where the picture was off sequence from the input? I don't know. So that's kind of an interesting thought, but it might take too long to film. I don't know. But that's the way I was going to do the test for the side-by-side.
Okay. Actually, that also is something that I didn't include in the OLED video, maybe in the V2 I would include, is I didn't go through the menu too much, but in the menu of the OLED, there's a setting that I totally forget its name right now, but it's about the OLED is the response time is too fast. And I read up on, I was like, what is this setting? What is it doing? And it was almost like movie mode or something, or video mode or something. I was like, this is weird. And it was a patch that was actually introduced after, it wasn't in the first revision of the OLED, then it was rolled in later, but it was also available as a patch. And it's something about the movie footage was not looking good on the OLED because the response rate was too fast. I think it basically, if you're running 24 frames a second of movie footage through it, the OLED was turning off too fast, and you were getting a flicker effect from your OLED. And I think it's holding on to a frame for a bit longer in movie mode. Because again, none of us are thinking about video footage, but that's the most of the use case for this thing. So yeah, that's something I'd like to. That would be really cool, especially if I had a faster camera to experiment with that and see what difference is that actually making on that screen.
Yeah, if you had a very fast camera, it would be cool, or something to see if. Or like I said, or an extremely long amount of time to set something up and film it for days. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know about, like, the good thing is I think there's still, your video left a lot that there still could be done with the OLED, and there's still like a lot of possibilities with that one. Whereas with my study on the LCD was kind of like disheartening to me at the end of the day, where put so much effort into it, but there's really so much lipstick you could put on this pig. It's not getting any better. It's like, it's just, it is what it is. And, but then it's kind of discouraging to think about, like, oh, more LCDs. And then I was like, man, it's just like the idea of more LCD stuff Just,
But let me tell you, if we could get our hands on more screens, like maybe a later LCD, that'd be interesting.
Absolutely. I think
Revision
that also made me think, though, the importance of if we find it and could get it to try to do this for the one piece, just because there might be a situation where there might be something that is really good, and it all does have historical.
Yeah, is there a good Sony? That was the first one, maybe the last line or something, maybe just before OLEDs. They must have done something, or I mean, and as you said, there's so much in this flat pro monitor area, and I think we're really some of the first creators to really dig into this in the retro space. So we kind of got this wide open field right now. I guess because there's not so many available. So
well, it's really funny. Yeah. It's funny too because this would be like if we were the first ones to start working on CRTs way back before when they were really junk, because that's kind of what they are right now. One of the things that the video that I would have just had come out before this, you haven't seen it because it's still at the filming of this. It's from my trip when I went to Tennessee, and I was like, man, I'm going to be out of town. I want to do something creative. And I wound up filming, going to 3 different places that were stores in the area and just hunting for stuff. And, you run into these LCDs, and a lot of them are just the junk, but it's still fun to look at. But the idea is that there's still a lot of them out there. There's no hard... They're real easy to get most of the time, but it's just, is it a good one? Like, that's what I always look and see. Is it really even one worth getting? That's the problem.
It's hard to know. The late model LCDs, the correct one. Actually, because I made a whole video a while ago about why I like these square LCDs. The ones that are still, look, you say 4x3, but I think technically it's 5x4. Someone will correct me in the comments, but I think they're technically 5x4, but they're square, non-widescreen. And for me, it's a great indicator that this is a decent LCD panel, because that was sort of, it's at the end, like when they've got a large square one that looks modern. So I happened to find, I already have 2, and I found another load of 8 of them at the secondhand store. I bought one more. I didn't take all 8, but I couldn't leave there without paying $8 for one more of these monitors. So I'm stocking up. I have 3 of these square LCDs,
That's
and
awesome.
They all have 5 millisecond response time. And I'm like, well, I'm keeping these. I'll keep these. These are the special ones for the future. Yeah, when we have the LCD podcast in 15 years.
So there was one that I found that was in that old format, and it was a television. It was made by Toshiba, and it was flat screen with a built-in DVD player and component input. And I was like, maybe this is tempting. But then the problem was with the stuff at the place I went to was a Goodwill. You have Goodwills in your country, right? You said
we have the equivalent of in Estonia. They're called Uuskasutuskeskus, but yes, Goodwill.
Well, that sounds about the same. Exactly. So I go into the Goodwill. That's what 2 of the places are, and they have those things, but they are just covered in like this disgusting slime half the time, and it's just like, you don't even want to touch it. I did find a VCR, and then I was trying to test it, and it almost ate the tape that I was testing. So that was funny. But the real incredible thing was when I was filming this footage, I was looking around, and there was like 2 or 3 other people filming for footage for things, like out there doing the same silly freaking thing. I was like, oh my gosh, I was like trying to hide it too. So like I was like this, and because one of the stores I went to at the end, they were like not cool about me filming, and I was like, I'm just gonna sneak around here, like I'm holding my phone, like I got a crick in my arm, and just filming all this stuff. And
how did you know they weren't cool with it? Did you ask them?
Well, no, I didn't ask them, because I mean, you just get those vibes sometimes when you walk into a place. I mean, this is another place too that's in like a junky section of town. I mean, it is really shady, seedy part of, like there's this big parking lot behind it, and there's like mattresses and like crackheads out back just like losing their stuff, and cops always driving through there, because this is on like the outskirts of Nashville, and this store is here that's been here forever, but every time it is a journey just to get to it. So you go through and so there's always like everybody's just like watching everybody. Like you go in there and it's just because there's like, we're watching you, don't steal from us stuff. And I'm like, of course I'm not, stealing anything. But that's that's just the attitude from a lot of the, unfortunately, probably people that go in there. Sometimes they are responsible for it. And the other thing was, it was like 20 minutes before they closed. Like I finally got down there. And so I was like, oh my gosh, they're like watching me. We're closing in 20 minutes. We're closing. And I'm like, yeah, right. So I'm like, but I was able to get some stuff.
Were those other people who you saw filming, were they filming tech stuff as well, or other things?
I mean, I don't know. One of the guys just looked like he was out of it. And the funny thing was at Goodwill, they were announcing like over the loudspeakers pre-recorded messages, and they would say, now please be respectful of other customers if you're filming in the store. Goodwill does not care. Please remember to do #Goodwill and put us on your videos. They're like, they don't care. And that's what was the big difference, is like at Goodwill there, they just don't even care. They're letting the people do it. And I saw one guy that was in there that was like this guy that would show up to yard sales a lot for years when I lived in the area back then. Because the first place I went was the place I went to like right down the street within 2 miles of my old house. And this guy would hit up all the yard sales because he was always trying to hunt for stuff to just sell on eBay, He wasn't actually filming, but I saw him in there like picking through stuff, and I was like, good grief, this guy, he's all over this store. Because the place was a really good store to get stuff. And then I look over and there's another guy just like with a stick, just like out of it, just filming stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is not like nonchalant. And I went to a second one, like the second closest Goodwill, and the other guy was there too. Like the guy who was just filming with a stick, he was there like 5 minutes after me. And so it was an experience to do that. So yeah, hopefully people have watched that and get a good laugh out of that video. And then I topped it all off, and I went to the Predators game and shot a little footage from inside the Nashville hockey Predators game that I had sent you a picture.
Predators of hockey, right?
Yeah. So that's the NHL, National Hockey League in America.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to say we need to back it up for our internet, me and everyone else.
So I know there probably be somebody who understands hockey and maybe this is the Americans' professional league. So I got an invite to go to a game.
Nice.
And so like sure, and I took some footage. I found this little area they had filled with arcade machines. And so I took pictures of that, and of course they were all LCD screens, and I was just like, this is rubbish.
You dig inside, there's probably like an original GBS 220 in there or something. It's
just So
but Steve, I don't want to give away too much of the video, but spoiler alert, when you went to this hockey game, did you get thrown out of this hockey game?
I'm gonna keep that as like, you'll have to watch it and see if I get thrown out. It's yeah, I was laughing because I was thinking about sports shenanigans, because I've been to a lot, and sometimes I've been asked to leave nicely, not nicely. The important thing is to, this is something I learned a long time ago. Take this as a seasoned heckler. And I grew up heckling at the minor league baseball. And so you got like the Major League Baseball, which is the big show, they call it, here in the United States. And then you go under that, and there's the minor league, which is basically guys who are getting paid nothing to go out there and do this as their second job, as hopes that one day they'll make it to the show. And so I could go out to those games for relatively cheap, and then, they'd have these events where it's like, drink all the beer you can stomach. And so you learn then to entertain yourself by heckling these poor AA ball players to death. And the trick is, though, to never use curse words, because they have an impossible time like to get rid of you if you don't swear and like use obscenities. It's really funny. So if you can keep it, if you can keep it,
you
like,
sir are no good at your job.
Exactly, and make it ridiculous. Like, "You, sir, are terrible at this job. You should go home and retire forever," and like not stop to where like they're staring you down. And you go, "What are you looking at? I am extremely upset, and I am talking to you." And it just like, and it is just by the end of like the 7th inning, they're so upset that you know that like. It's funny because you know, like you're having probably an impact on that play. Right?
Yeah, you're fucking with some guy. This poor bastard, he can't get into the main leagues. His second job,
he's
his
getting
wife's
paid
been
$10.
nagging him. He's still doing that shit, and then this fucking cracker up there in the stands is yelling at him. God.
Exactly. So yeah, the last one I did get asked to leave recently for something, and maybe we'll save that one for another story. But yeah, I used to go to all kinds of different things. You know, what about you? Did you ever go, like, what's the experience like? I know that you go mostly to events, but is there a sporting event that is big anywhere near there that would be comparable?
Yeah, what would be big? Because then we have, I guess we have a major league or a national league of football, but even those are a few thousands or 5,000 maybe might come to one of those. No, that would be a national game. Then you'd maybe fill the stadium. I don't know, sports that we might go and watch. We were watching some mixed martial arts a little while ago. That was pretty cool. But no, not a lot of just getting out there and just watching sports. I do kind of miss that, especially in a big stadium, in a big area to go and do that. I think as an Australian, I miss a bit of cricket, I have to admit. I miss the cricket. Look, I understand it's boring as fuck. I understand you're looking at these, one guy hits it, the other guy runs across, and you think baseball doesn't look exciting. Wait till
baseball,
you see cricket.
that's what I'm saying, not much difference. You know, there's a lot of downtime.
And the difference with cricket, though, is that we have versions of the game. So there's a short version of the game that can be like, I don't know, a couple of hours, probably 3 hours, 4 hours. Then there's the 1-day version, takes the whole day. Then there's a 5-day version of the game. One game of cricket is 5 days, and it's the best. Yes. It's so good. There's strategy, and you just kind of have it on, and it's like the traditional thing we call the Boxing Day test. There's always a test from Australia and someone else on Boxing Day. So we all, Christmas, and it's all hot, and we're watching that. And maybe the game doesn't go for 5 days, so if you got the 5th day ticket, you never know. Someone can win the game in probably about 3, maybe they could win the game if they were real good. And yeah, it sounds like boring as dog shit, but geez, I miss it. I love it. You're out there in the field, a bit of yelling. And maybe this is our version in Australia, that because it's a big round oval and the two blokes are the two batters are in the middle, and then you've got the fielders who are positioned all around the field. So yeah, if you've got a fielder who's near to you on the field, you want to yell out to him like, "Hey mate, fuck, you missed it, you fucking or something like that. Or then he'll be out there in the field doing his exercises, doing some stretches, and then the crowd does the stretches with him and everything.
Hey, your pecker's hanging out. It's like,
yeah. So maybe cricket would be my one.
That's cool. Yeah, so like they weren't one of the funny things I was thinking about when I was thinking about the sports stuff was NASCAR races. And are you familiar with this NASCAR race like that?
Sure. Most people know NASCAR.
Yeah, so NASCAR. And I mean, I'm talking about when I was going to NASCAR, it was like the heyday of NASCAR, early 2000s, right? This was when I was still in college. And they would be that kind of an event where it was, the first one I went to was in Alabama, in the middle of nowhere. I mean, nowheresville, where it was Talladega. Talladega, my friend calls me up. Steve, I'm in the dorm rooms at this time at Murfreesboro, at MTSU, just in the dorms. Like, what am I going to do this weekend? I got to call my buddy. Steve, you got to get ready, man. I'm driving through there in an hour. I'm taking you to Talladega. And I'm like, what is this Talladega stuff, man? And he's like, oh, it's NASCAR. We're going there. And I'm like, but dude, it's Thursday, man. Those NASCAR races aren't till like Sunday, right? And he's like, yeah, but don't worry. I got a ticket lined up. We're going down there now. We're going to camp and hang out the whole weekend. Because I was like, well, that's good because I'm broke, right? I don't have any money. I'm in college. I'm just in the dorms. It's okay. So he shows up and he's got this, the original Chevy Suburban from late 90s where it's like a boat, I mean, it's a monstrous thing. Pulls up in that. And he's like, I got a spot in the back for you. I was like, all right, I got a sleeping bag. And there's like this much room in the back between all their camping gear and all the beer that's been brought for the weekend. And then a couple dudes like, yeah, we're going to Talladega, And I'm like, I don't even know what this is. And I'm like, yeah, man, Talladega, yeah, woo. And so we got down there, drove for like 6 hours all night, get there. And it's just literally you pull up in the biggest campground like party thing I've ever seen in my life. I just couldn't believe it. You just like, you go in, there's nothing in this town. It's just open highways, and there's a racetrack somewhere around here. You can't see it because you're camping like 2 miles away from it,
Okay.
So, yeah, we just pull in, and it's like you get to the end, and it's like, yeah, this is our spot, man. We're going to go in here. So then, of course, you sit there and you drink all the beer, and you hang out all that night. So they let you light as many fires and hang out all night if you want. So
Cool.
Yeah, we just.
So is it like tailgating? It's a little bit like that atmosphere.
Yes, but it's just like 3 days of tailgating. So you're doing this again. This is Thursday, and this place just keeps filling and filling, and every night becomes like wild, wild stuff. I mean, I could go into stories like the most wild things that happen just on random nights walking around this park. You'd be like, I don't have anything to do. It's 12 o'clock. I'll grab some beer and let's just wander and see what happens. So, like, the guys who went with me was the guy I was telling you about just a second ago who called me. His name is Dave. So he's like, yeah, man, we're going, And the other guy who comes, his name's Jonathan. And Jonathan was kind of like, he was like the good old country boy redneck, like, but dirty, like perverty. And you're just like this old friend that you've had forever is hilarious. But he would get, he would drink, he would get crazy. And he had this... We go to these tailgate parties, and he had this chef's apron, and it said, like, kiss the chef or kiss the cook on it, and it had this towel hanging from it, right, like in the front. And the funny thing was is you'd pick the towel up and wipe your hands with it. Well, it had this big fake pecker and balls attached to the thing so like you lift it up and it would have a huge pecker and balls just hanging there. So it was hilarious. But the problem was is we seen it like 1,000 times. He would go to like these tailgates and wear it all weekend, and like sometimes only that and like some shorts, and just like this, like, hey ladies, how y'all doing, want to kiss the cook? And just like get out of here. So yeah, that's the other guy there at this crazy tailgate, and you're spending just days in here, and then like there's a race. And the crazy thing about NASCAR at this time was you could bring your own coolers into the race filled with your own beer. Like you didn't have to buy anything. And so there was, you talk about some drunk fools after 5 hours of a race in the Alabama summer sun.
Yeah. After
a whole weekend of partying. I mean, I saw grown men the size of like 300 pounds passed out, covered in like beer cans, because they passed out like 20 minutes before the race. And like all these people just throw beer cans on them, like, oh, loser, you didn't make it. And so you just, I mean, it's the craziest thing. It was like really the peak time for NASCAR, because after that, people started losing interest. And it was just not the same. This was like something that, like, I went to all these races like the Daytona 500 and these Bristol night races, and these things were like the hardest ticket to get in sports when this was going on. Again, like 15, 16, 17 years ago, right after kind of the death of Dale Earnhardt Sr., was kind of when it all kind of took off. And so it was an interesting experience. After going to it that one time with those guys, I pretty much was like, yes, I will go. And I did. I went to, like I said, the Daytona 500. I went to that twice. I took my grandmother to that, and my mom and my wife now. She was just actually, like, we just started dating that time. So that was a fun trip. It's a little bit less party there. It's more of like a corporate event at that one.
Okay. Is it because the where you went is like really out in the countryside, really the bumfuck nowhere, so shit gets wild? And how often back in that day, was that once a year? Or
that
why
was twice a year. And it's this huge track, all right? And see, this is like one of the times they had to start changing the rules for NASCAR, because if you would go, it was a huge track, over 2.5 miles long, and they'd be doing 500 miles on this thing. And it would get all the way to the end, and they would have a caution because something would like happen, like a piece of a car would fly off, and then it would go. This time they would do like that 3 times or something, and if it just kept going to caution on the last lap, they'd just stop the race. And that had happened like twice in a row. Like this was the second year it had happened. I wasn't there the year before, but at this one it happened, and the crowd was so pissed off that they took their beers and they threw them like over the fence. Like thousands of people at this Alabama racetrack was filled, and beer. I mean, Lewis, I turned around and I was just watching because I was so scared somebody was going to hit me in the back of the head with a flying beer bottle because it was glass. I mean, like I said, they let you bring anything in here. And I mean, they're like, screw you, Jeff Gordon, they're cheating for you. Boom, boom, boom. And then after that, they like changed the rules where they're like, we won't end under that kind of a scenario. I can't remember the exact way it all played out, but they changed the rules so the ending was different because of it. And they had to like spell it out. But yeah, it was crazy. They were literally
and no more unlimited beer as well.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That was it was crazy. And then here, this was even funnier. Listen to this. So the area where this race is out in the middle of nowhere. This is so good. And you go, and there's only like 2 grocery stores and then a couple of truck stops here. And so you're going there Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday you're going there and buying as much as you want because they just keep them stocked for this weekend. But what happens is on Sunday, the day of the race, which is at like 2:30 in the afternoon, okay, which, you know, after lunchtime, it's illegal for them to sell beer in this city anymore after midnight Saturday the night before. And not
before a race or before any Sunday?
No, any Sunday. They don't sell it any Sunday. So it's like so there's this rule there. So then when you show up to the store thinking you're going to get some beer, you can't that day. And there's literally like the largest chains you've ever seen from some kind of like Moby Dick movie that are like barred over the coolers where you were originally getting the beer. It's just filled with beer, but it's all been locked down, and there's like armed guards because they're like, don't you try come get some of this beer now, hillbilly. You know, so it's give me the beer. Yeah, they're like, oh, I forgot to buy beer. And then you go in the parking lot and they're like, yeah, we got this Busch Light beer. It's only $50 a 6-pack. Yeah. It's like, dude, that's like, all right.
Should have stocked up. You should have.
Exactly.
Well, it sounds like the car was full
of
alcohol.
Oh yeah, it was just, we knew that. As my friend's like, oh, you don't want to show up there and need the beer. That's what happened to this guy last year. And so he didn't have any beer on Sunday. He didn't go into the race. He had to buy all the beer there. So that's what they, that was the
I
only
like
chance.
How he talks like he's like clever, like I've worked it out. I'm the genius. I've done it here. You got to buy the beer.
I'm experienced. Well, yeah, this guy. See, this guy was Dave. Is his name? His old man was a truck driver, and he knew all like this backwoods stuff. Like I said, this is just one. We can go on these other times. I'll get prepared for something more, but
Are all NASCAR tracks just round, or do they is it all
for the most part?
Same?
They're like variations of round and like size. So they go as small as half a mile, maybe even a quarter mile. So it's really tiny, and it's super loud, and it's just like
how I think I would love to go to a NASCAR race, right? I would love it. I think the atmosphere, all that crazy stuff that you talk about. But a little hint, Steve. Internationally, everyone looks at America and says, well, they just drive around a fucking oval, around and around again. How dumb are these guys? They can only turn left.
That's it. That's all they can do is turn left. That's it.
Left.
They
I'm like, really? Nothing else?
No
just
right turns. No way.
No nothing.
No, they're actually, so there are like 3 or 4 road tracks that NASCAR will do. Now, NASCAR will have a whole season of like, I don't know, 35 to 40 races, you know, and maybe 5 of them will be on these road tracks where it does have turns, like an IndyCar race. You've seen
Yeah,
those in
okay,
like a
sure,
formula. Exactly. Just like that. They'll put them on that kind of a course. And so the guys who are good at doing the turns always are not good at this track. And there's always like some guys who come out of nowhere who are good because they normally just do that formula. And here it's a different, it's got its own league here. So yeah, but the majority of the big famous tracks. So for example, Talladega was one of the biggest in size. And so like you'd see the cars and then it'd go like, and then they go way out into views over here and then they come back.
That's dope though. That's pretty cool.
And it would be like that all day. But see, the problem was when you would go, I went to a Bristol night race, which is like this short track in Bristol, Tennessee. And it was insane because there's 43 cars on this track and it's so tiny. It's half a mile. All they're doing is this and it's just loud. You have to wear earplugs. You cannot hear anything because it'll make your ears bleed if you don't. And you're just sitting there and it's like, I think at the apex of this, there's almost 100,000 people at this event. Live. Crazy stuff. So
to me, that would be while I'm saying like, oh, the car just goes around and around and what does it do? But to me, I told you that I would sit and watch a cricket game for 5 days. Why? Because I love the strategy. So I get it. When you're going around and around this loop, first of all, you're going really fast. You don't have to stop for a corner or something. And I guess it's that long-term strategy. I slowly get up, I get behind the guy and, I don't know. It sounds like some strategic thinking in a NASCAR race.
It had its own culture. It's definitely got its own thing going on there, man. It was like its own life force. Just like I feel like you go into almost any sports entertainment venue thing like that, and it's like the home team, and you get kind of a feeling sometimes where some of it just feels like, oh my gosh, if you were like an out of towner going to this game and showing up with this kind of fan base, you'd be like scared. I always remember feeling that way, like going certain things, and then other times you'd laugh because it would be the opposite. It's just like nobody shows up and there's like this big empty space, and so it's kind of a mixed bag. It's definitely different now after all the pandemic has changed everything, but I also think you can see that too on the American television here. There's plenty of live sporting events every weekend still going, and they're filling up. People are just going to them. The hockey game was how many? It was during the middle of the weekend. I mean, it was at the time it went going, it was mostly full. I mean, like 80% filled in this indoor arena, which would have seat 14,000 people if it was filled or something. So. But yeah,
it's good. It's good that people are going to sport. It's good that people are getting out, and that I know in America you're free as you can be. We're not quite free. We're almost free here. We're getting to it. So nice.
It was a good chance. It was not something I was expecting to do. And that's generally all these sporting events go for me. See. Yeah. So I was glad to be able to go. The last time I had went was a while before all this stuff happened. It was actually like a playoff game too, so that was fun. But there are some fun.
I love it. I can't wait.
Stories.
When I come, I'm having my trip to your place, definitely we're gonna be going to some sporting matches.
So speaking of dates and ideas here, let's put a marker here. This only took 30 minutes for this announcement I forgot to say. Important announcement, everyone. So I will be back at the Music City Multicon. This is like so much advance notice. I've never given this much advance notice, Louis. This is... Oh, man, yes. We have over 9 months advance notice if anybody feels like coming out to the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. It's not that far out. It's like 20 miles outside of Nashville in a place called Lebanon at the Farm Bureau Expo Center. It's the same place for the video I did where I was at the CRT Paradise, and I did show all those CRTs. So that will be back again October 28th to the 30th. I will be doing my panel, and footage from my panel from 2021 will be available soon. So when it's available,
that's cool.
I'll put it up, and then we'll be able to talk more about that, and so that
That's
should
going to be
be
interesting.
soon.
So that's you're going to put that on your own channel. They give you that footage and you can put it on your own channel.
It's either that or he'll put it out, and then I'll just get a copy of it and put it out on my own channel too. So that's what I did last time, and it's fine that way because I have a bigger, I mean, they don't really make videos that often or anything, but I'll be going.
So what was
back
last
there.
year's? What was the topic you talked about this year again?
It was kind of like this, almost, it was pretty much an alteration. So I originally had made this presentation and published it, I don't know, man, it's been almost 2 years ago. And I took that was the only time I gave it, and then everything shut down the next year. And so last year I took the same presentation and just redid it a little bit, and then added a section where I went through like the 240p test suite. I had the CRTs set up. So it will be just like me running through that presentation with the Q&A. I don't know when so the cool thing is I don't know when they started recording it, but like when the beginning of the thing showed up, there was a kid there that was probably 9 or 10 years old asking me all kinds of awesome questions about CRTs, like with his dad. He was just like, what's the normal problem? Is it capacitor failure or cold solder joints? And I was like,
dang,
what? Like out of nowhere, like, where is this kid coming from? I'm like, wow, you must be real proud of your son here. And he's like, yeah, where can I find a CRT? And like all these, 15 minutes of really good questions before the presentation started, because I was just I was going with him, and there was probably 10 people in there with us. And so then I was like, let me go through the presentation. I'll open up for questions at the end, because it's a long one, and it's got all that stuff where it's like the history of the CRT. It's on my channel. It's got a lot of
I've
views.
seen that video.
Right.
Yeah,
So that
well.
one is the presentation. So it's just like I sped it up, took out some stuff, changed some stuff in it, and then but what I did was talking to him. I have been working on this because I'd like to give that one still and alter it a little bit more, but also do another one, a new class where I could go and just tear apart a CRT, and then put it back together, and that'd be it for like a 45-minute presentation. And that way that could be different, and that's not something I have to sit there and go through slides, because the other one's a very slide-heavy show.
Right, the next thing.
So it's
sure, that's nice as your keynote. That's nice as here's the main Steve thing. This is the body of experience. I can bring in my nice presentation. But because I was going to say, I mean, that's the one thing that I took away from your video was, gee, you went all that way, you did all that thing, and then it's just one talk, and then you're done. And I'm glad that this year they're giving you a little bit more extra opportunities, different rooms, different style, not just an auditorium, maybe a smaller thing where people can gather around and watch or something like that.
Yeah, and I don't know that. See, last year I wasn't really sure on how I was going to be able to even do it, and I was honestly didn't really. Leading up to it, I was a little just leery. Before I would go and I would work the whole thing as a booth vendor, and so I would make a lot of money selling retro games then. But I've gotten to the point now where I really don't want to sell my stuff that's left, because I did that for years. And a lot of that stuff I was like, I'll never find it again. But then luckily I did. But I still like the idea, though, of having a place where I know the owner. And like I said, I can go do all that. And I thought that would be a really cool thing, that if you ever were able to come over here, you could come that weekend, and we could do the whole podcast from there. And then, we could do anything, film for each other and stuff. I mean, at least they don't care about me filming any of obviously there. So I was able to get great shots, but it's literally me going and sitting on my tripod around something, filming, and then sitting down, and I would just which is cool, but it would be it would be more fun to do it with somebody else. But it's a good event.
I'd love to do that. So let's see. Well, good that you've given me the many months of notice that who knows what can be arranged.
That thinks, well, hey, I want to maybe go to this show. Here's a lot of notice. If you watch this and you're thinking about a show that will have a lot of stuff, you could go check out that video where I went around. I pretty much showed everything except for there was this whole techno dance tent somewhere that I didn't even go to, and then there was a pinball room which I forgot about, which it's really cool. It's like this own little like seedy pinball circuit that is like old school, and so it's really fun. Also, it's got that. Are you familiar with like the 90s movie Kingpin, the bowling movie with Eddie Murphy, or no Eddie? What am I thinking? Not Eddie Murphy. Now I'm going to sound stupid.
1996 film.
Yeah.
Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson, yeah. Eddie Murray. I don't know why I said Murphy. Sorry, Eddie Murray.
Sounds close.
But anyway,
No.
Big Irm McCracken.
Bill Murray.
Yeah, so it's like this funny thing going on. So that's kind of like a good comparison there for
I'd love to. I've also been thinking about what could we do if we were there, because my background, as everybody knows, is live events. I love live. I love events. I know how to put on events. I know how to perform at events. So I would love to not only do the podcast live. I know I've been hassling you that we should do the online podcast live one time when we find the right day and the right time slot and so forth. I've been experimenting with that. I just even wanted that. I want to do live, and the seeing the chat and having the interaction is something that really gets me going. So it'll be very cool to be at one of those events. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome to sit there just at like a cheesy table and film us and all this background clutter. And it's Halloween weekend, so there's always cosplay and stuff always going on. So it's not there's a lot of interesting characters now at this event. There's also huge, at least last year, and I think it will be the same, there's this huge fighting scene, like fight game, Street Fighter, tournaments at this event where you can win money. So there was hundreds of people there just for that. So it was and it's a big event center. So
sounds good. I'm looking forward to doing it live. I'm looking forward to just doing it not only with you in person, but I'd love to have a live show where we just get up here and do the podcast.
Yeah, well, we could of course do that. I think that
as well. So many options. So many options. We've run a few here in Estonia. We've run some of our guys in our management agency are pretty popular. So with popular podcasts as well, and we've run live podcasts a bunch of times. I would say. Well, not only a bunch of times to different podcasts, and probably I think we've done up to about 200 or 250 for a podcast recording where we actually sold tickets and so forth. We found once you go past sort of 250, then you're really getting into a very large room, and you maybe lose some of the intimacy that should come with a podcast.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have that many people show up for our podcast.
It won't be a problem. All right.
No.
It'll be good. Two and a half.
Unfortunately, see, that's what I would spend a lot of my time doing, is sitting in on the other events. So, it's hit or miss sometimes too with events coming back. I mean, I was thankful that, because leading up to my event, every other event didn't have a lot of people in it, and it was like, and so it wasn't. There were more people in the first time, but the first time I did it, it was a room that, like you said, it was a room that's probably 1/4 the size of the room they had me in this time. So when you have, like 12 to 15 people in a room that seats 30 versus 20 in a room, 20 to 24 in a room that seats 100, you're having more people show up, but it doesn't feel like that, and then you really feel bad for other people.
It certainly is a different atmosphere
have
in a large room.
Two people show up in a room like that. How can you
communicate with the audience? How do you get with them? And there's also, as a performer, how you fill the space in a way in my performance, and it's harder to fill that larger empty room and sort of be that show person and that personality when you've got such a big room. But look, I understand that's just part of conferences. There's a room. Look, you're the early one in the day. We understand not as many people come. We can't shift you, but there's little things. Yeah, I mean, sure, my whole life is thinking about what level is this performer at and what room can I sell them in. That's literally to sum up my business. So it's something I would think about a lot. I was actually on the weekend, I was performing at two events. I was the host on Friday and another event on Saturday. Both company parties, so companies are trying to get their. One was a small one. The first one was for a small crypto company here in Estonia. Very nice people. I was the host. They had a band. My friend did some other stand-up comedy. And then Saturday was a very, 250 people for a bank, international people, fancy ties, the whole thing. So when I was there, actually, I was speaking to my buddy Anton, who runs one of the tech companies here. So every time I was saying in a few of my videos that I know a lot of the companies that rent gear, that provide these technical gear in Estonia, because I work with them at these events. And lately I've been asking all of them. And again, I asked my friend Anton, I said, you got any of those Sony Pro monitors? And he was like, nah, mate, Samsung. I've got Samsung, but nothing Sony. And it's a funny end or addition to our conversation about LCD and OLED and all of that. I can go down and rent a whole bunch of OLEDs, a whole bunch of interesting other monitors, but it seems right now we're only really interested in the Sony ones. Beyond that, it's just the TV.
I don't know. Yeah, I remember when when a lot of the first early flat screens that were in stores were Samsungs. It seemed like a lot of them were Samsungs. So they've always had kind of a reputation in that sphere of those flat screens. Compared to prior to that, there weren't too many Samsung CRTs. They did make some, but it's not like they made it. They were pretty much piecing together stuff from every other TV manufacturer that made like an RCA TV pretty much. But yeah, it's interesting to think about where those go. I think that the more you get into it, it's just like anything new. I think we're getting in here, so we're looking at the cream of the crop that we know of, and eventually we'll be working around different other things.
Different
and you'll get
monitors.
to different stuff where there is a good competition, for Sony, other than flat screens. But I always liked their flat screens. I remember being like blown away. A buddy of mine got whenever the PlayStation 3 first came out, and he had bought a TV to go with it, like a nice one, and that came out at the same time, and it had like the glass edge around it for widescreen, and it was 1080p. It had a high refresh rate, and it was like the best thing I remember seeing. I was like, this is a beautiful thing. So they're still out there.
I wanted to ask you, actually, that reminded me of watching your last video on the BVM, the F1E or E1E, what was it?
F5. I actually wrote it right here. BVM 14F5U.
That's right, the F5U. I was very interested because I have some very similar monitors. I have the E1E, I think, as well, a couple of those. But what I was impressed with was how good your filming of the CRT screen is. Okay. A little bit of rolling, but really not much overall. Talk us through some of those things that you're doing to get great shots of a CRT.
Okay, so lighting is unbelievably important. So the first thing is in the basement that you're in, not this part, the bunker part. It's got low light. There are a couple skylights like this, and then a bunch of lights that you can turn off on the ceiling. And you could do the same thing in here. So I have to wait till like the sun goes down. And the big part about that is you're eliminating the glare. Like, if you go into a room and have that stray daylight, it's going to be a real tough thing to try to get that glare. Then you can go in after the fact and introduce lights. And the funny thing is with the CRT filming, it's more about kind of getting light behind it, the CRT. So I'm using my shadow lights to project light behind it. At the same time, I can't aim it so that you could see the light off the screen. It has to be kind of situated in a spot to the sides. And sometimes I don't need that much. I can get it with my overhead lights combination wise now. I've got so many overhead lights that I can like click them all off and just use like one back one that shines down. And so that's much more helpful, especially with no backlights. And then you have to set the camera always to be 60 frames per second.
Okay.
And then, so that's an important thing, is just to have the settings right. But it might be different if it's, I don't know if PAL stuff scrolls at a different rate, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll have to. I guess we'll.
So that
that'll
if you
be
have
an advanced
PAL,
topic. What
yeah,
to do with
I don't
that,
know because
how
I
that's
don't
gonna go.
ever film PAL, so that could be its own interesting thing.
I'll have to investigate
Right.
on this side here because I run this camera that we're watching now at 60.
Yeah.
It's a setting that I can switch it over to 60, but it's true. My CRT is going to run at 50 no matter what.
Yeah, see, so here it's like 59.97 frequency, so that's close enough to 60 where the camera doesn't usually show the timing as much. Now, the last thing is is the actual what you're filming. So you can't. It's very difficult to film something that's bright background. You know, like for example, some screens have a black or darkened background, right? And those are going to film incredibly well. Like for example, the opening stuff generally for like Castlevania games, right? How it's got the black, it's basically a black background with reds, blues that are used in the other stuff. Whereas you try something different, it can be more difficult depending on what that background is. It'll just flash.
Something
and then
bright
the camera
and flashy is going to be much harder to use.
Camera can't pick it up as hard, and you might get effects like that. You can also, a lot of times it's just an angle that you're shooting. Sometimes you just have to change the angle. And
I noticed a lot of yours are flat on most.
A lot of them are flat on. A lot of them are in one side, like zoomed up into a corner, circuit sides, or, you know, kind of crooked, maybe looking down so that the strobing goes away. And then I just film short segments. It's just, you know, when I shoot like B footage of this stuff, it's like I sit there, I'll set the thing up, the monitor, try to get the lighting situated, and then I just go in and spot film different sections, and some of it doesn't look very good, and some of it looks good enough. But
Which camera are you using for this?
You can use. I use anything. I have to. The ones that can do 4K is my cell phone. That's really it.
Are you using the cell phone?
Yeah,
those
I'm using
shots?
my Samsung cell phone, Galaxy phone, because I can't get like this phone, this camera I'm using here. It'll go 60 frames, but it can only do 1080p, and the settings for whatever ultra settings are on the camera, and then I can go and do post editing, but I don't generally do that on the shots of the CRT stuff. Surprisingly, like I generally make that a different line because I do all, you know, correction for stuff where I'm in the shot and editing on that end of a color correction, a little bit of a tiny sharpener, and something else. I do it on everything except for generally the CRT footage, just because I try to get it as close to what it would actually look like, and I don't want it to be. That's what will really mess it up. If you start doing those filters, it'll start messing up the lighting and changing the colors.
Do you have a problem with? Is it your phone is focusing really quickly? I have a problem that I have autofocus, and I know that I should manual focus. Because I'm getting a lot of when it changes screen to dark, back the color.
Yeah, mine's pretty good about like I can focus, you know, in a spot on it by tapping it. I know it's kind of crazy. Like I was looking forever for the right camera, and I've even talked to Bob and everybody. It's still, there's not like a perfect camera for this, right? Nobody's really making. If there was somebody making a camera, they would make it specifically at that refresh rate. I'm sure it's not something that's that like crazy difficult to do for some genius somewhere who works on cameras, is to make a thing that synchronizes to that refresh rate. It's just now the standard is 60 frames or 30 frames. Before I used my cell phone, I was actually using an old Nikon camera that would do 1080p 30 frames. And that was like, I thought my stuff looked terrible with it. And I did that for like I was funny. I went early cell phone, first like 50 videos. Then I went to this Nikon camera that was gifted to me. Then I bought this Sony Alpha 5100 that I'm using right now, and I could never get this one situated the way I wanted to until now. There's so many good like tutorials on it, since it's like an 8-year-old camera, that I've got it like perfectly set to the way it'll look its best, I think. But I just was like, I can do so much more with the fact that the camera on my phone can do 4K and 60 frames. And so I was just able to get better clarity, I think, too, you know, with frame and with taking those shots.
That's great, man. That came out well. Actually, because now I think about it, I have in the OLED PVM video, I've got shots of the CRT BVM, and I remember that being quite okay when I took those shots. So yeah, the 60,
it looks good.
It was a lower room. It had Final Fight going on that, and that didn't roll at all. Yeah, mostly I had problems shooting that video with autofocus, even on the OLED PVM, because it'll go black, and I know I've just got to load my camera.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I stopped using this. I think that was one of my big complaints about the Sony Alpha that I'm using, was that so many times they're like, that's what they were like, oh, you got to get this camera. It has awesome, you know, autofocus, because you can do like this and it'll catch you. And it's great. But like you say, it will just sit there and do that the whole time. And like if you're watching this, you could watch it in slow motion and see my hands going all over the place and it's picking them up. So it does. But like you say, it's going to constantly do shifting that. So that's why I got tired of using it. Because again, I would have to switch that every time to something else that figure out what worked with the camera. Whereas I don't know. I was like, put it in my phone in the regular mode. Now every time I start it, it's in that mode. And that's what I try to do. The majority of filming. The problem with doing the 4K filming is it's so large. You would not, I mean, all my videos are like, I don't know. I don't know what a normal one used to be, but now they're like 10 gigabytes of processed, you know, 4K footage for an MP4. And so you start saving those. And I've got just too much storage here with it on there. But at the same time, it takes the graphics stuff. It has to work hard to do anything to that. I'm really surprised. Like anytime you add a processing to a clip, it adds so much back end rendering time.
How long does one of the, let's say you're you're doing about 20 minute videos. How long is that taking to export?
Hour and a half to 2 hours. Like after I finish it and like I'm ready to render it into an MP4 that I eventually load up to YouTube. That's how long. And the thing is if it's all like that color correction and stuff on the footage, if I leave that off, I can tell, because then my uploads only take like 30 minutes. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot to do that. Because, and I don't know that, I mean, it's funny to even worry about it. But at the same time, you figure you got it. You might as well just do it.
If it works for you, it's
right.
great. You've got that workflow. You know how it works. Because for me, I'm using almost an 8-year-old Mac to edit on. So if I've got a longer thing, I just leave it overnight usually. So I actually don't know how long. A 10-minute thing I could.
That's what I was going to say. Before I got my new system, I couldn't do 4K. Like that was another thing. Before I got, I thought it was interesting. Bob had mentioned this. He did like a build on Twitch. I didn't get to see it, but he built a new PC. And that's the issue, is you need a good graphics card to at least be able to edit this video and do a lot of things. If I tried to do the color correction to like 1080p footage on my laptop, which was a Dell, it would crash it. It would just freeze and crash, and I just couldn't do it. Whereas with this system, it was opening up where I could do anything. Because I don't know how. Like I'm not good at, like if I could do graphics and stuff, I could do it. But it's like so hard to learn each new of these new things. But yeah, that's what. So I'm learning like things and things that I just wasn't able to do before due to the technical things. Now I can, because it just takes more stuff. It took 9 months to get that graphics card.
Oh, that's right. Because the shortages of the
video.
Well,
yeah. And it took 9 months, and I got on a wait list for evga.com. And if you've never bought a graphics card from them, they'll put you on a wait list. and they'll give you like 3 to choose from. You get to choose whichever on their list, and then they'll let you know when one's available. And they give you 20 hours to buy it, and then that's it.
Right.
You lose if you don't.
Well, let's hope things are changing. I've been reading that with the cryptocurrency crackdowns around the world, that this is now meaning crypto miners are not buying GPUs, which is leading to price falls. I hope this comes out. I don't know if this is just some media kind of shake-up that I heard. It would be good if it comes out like that, because I don't have a tower PC. I use a mini PC and my old Mac, and it's fine. I get if we do the podcast, I just leave it overnight. It's, I can't, with the time zones anyway, it's no use me getting one out really soon anyway. I sort of need to wait a while. And I only edit in 1080p 60, so my old Mac can deal with that. I don't need 4K. And then, although even because with the last episode that I put out with Pork Chop Express, because that had no video, what I did was I found this tool that you could give it a WAV file. It's a command line tool. You pass it a WAV file, and it gives you back an MP4 file with your waveform done.
Like a heartbeat waveform looking.
Little bit, yeah.
Like
if you watch the Pork Chop Express video, you can see it's sort of it kind of, and it's something rather than a static image, and it's synced to the audio, and it all makes sense. But that was taking 5 hours to export itself, so I had to wait one overnight for that, get that file, then overlay that video in Final Cut, then do another export of another 3 hours or something. But that's fine. I'm in no rush.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just like how much time do you just keep putting into a video sometimes? Yeah, it's excuse me. I often wonder myself, like, will it really matter if I add like this little graphics to this one little scene? It's like, it's not going to get 1,000 more people to watch it.
Yeah, that's true. You got to get it at
some
stage. You got to get it out the door. Otherwise, no one will watch it if you forever are adding those bits in.
Yeah, that was some stuff. The BVM was interesting. I had some people asking some stuff about the memory cards, and so this is something interesting I thought we should maybe mention, because that BVM had a ton of hours on it, like over 120,000 hours on it, which means it was bought, it was switched on, and just left on, and that's why I got a new CRT in 2005, which would have been like 8 years after it was installed or something. So 120-something hours, 1,000 hours, because it's like 13 years, right? So that's a lot of time. If it's just on all the time, that's what it comes out to. So people were asking about this, like, how is that even possible? And yeah, of course they could leave them running. It's not like it's just counting hours, adding them some trick way. But it did make me think, because this person left a comment saying that the memory card could have a battery in it that goes bad. And that's very true. It's an SRAM video or memory card. It's very old school crap.
But those memory cards they don't stay in the unit though. Are we
no,
talking about
that's what I'm saying. Like, he was thinking, he told me, oh, well, it can lose all its functionality if you take the memory card out, and it doesn't have, basically, if the battery goes dead in the memory card. And I was like, that's not the way this is working. All that information is stored in that first board with all the VGA looking inputs in the back. It's like ISR board on there.
Oh, that input board with the
next to the input boards with what looks like VGA connections.
Oh, yes, on the end. It's typically on on one side, on the left side or something.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's where your data is stored for your BVM, like the hours and things like that. And but this made me think of something that was key. So if you have hours on your BVM, they're all stored on that card. And that card, if you took that card out and put in a card you found from another BVM that said it had like 15,000 hours, then the next person thinks they have a 15,000 hour BVM when they really have 120,000 hour BVM. So I was like, it's like odometer fraud.
It is a little bit.
So
I remember
there's a way to check, and you gotta go ahead.
I was going to say, I do, because I have of those, the BVM F1 or whatever's that I have like 4 of them. I had 5. Vlad's got 1 now. And I think only two of them properly work. Like I've got enough bits to make all two work. And I was swapping around those cards at one stage to diagnose problems. And I found that it has to be exactly the same model. I think like even if you say like the F1E or what E1E, whatever, it has to be exactly. I have one of them that's a bit different and it didn't work. That odometer fraud works to an extent.
Well, but there's a good thing you can check it. So that card that you remove, it has the serial number for the monitor, and you could take the serial number off that card and go, and if you look at the frame for the monitor under the top shell, it'll have the serial number, and those numbers should match. And the serial number will even be in a third place. It's like a VIN verification.
Well, that's true. So the serial number is going to be on the back of the monitor, on the card, and on the frame inside. Yeah. Is that the three you mean?
Yeah. So it should be on all that stuff, and it might even be on another spot somewhere. But you can verify that. But that's not the only one that I had seen with over 100,000 hours on it. I've seen plenty. Like
okay. And there's nothing on the tube, so you couldn't tell anything about the tube.
The tube had been replaced, obviously by the sticker, but and only thing I did notice, I had to actually add, and I didn't do this on that video, I had to add a purity magnet, which is a little circular magnet. We've talked about them before. I had to add that to one of the corners behind like the top corner because there was a purity discoloration that wouldn't go away, and it was because they'd reset the tube and they just didn't do that with the new tube. They just put the tube on there and set it and then got it to mostly good. And in 2005, they just swapped it and said, hey, this is an old monitor probably. This is the best it can do. So I was able to go and add a purity magnet and balance the color back out, which was a good thing. But I didn't. That actually was not on the video because basically I did that first and then came back later and decided to do the video on the monitor when I took the screen layer off because I was like, I'll have to take that off eventually. And so that was one of the things that, so that was like a load. I've got one more monitor that's on my maybe videos to work on list. And that would be a Panasonic from that list of, or from that load of monitors that I worked on. It's a BTH 1350Y, which is like a 600 line monitor. And
okay, not too
shadow
bad.
mask.
And it's professional level.
Yeah. And this one's actually made by Panasonic. The other one I did was made by JVC. Inside, it just said Panasonic on the outside.
Yeah, Panasonic. That's interesting. I don't think we've seen much at all of Panasonic Pro monitors.
No, just the one, that I did last time. It's from the same guy. He owns both of them. And they're both really good monitors. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Really, that was it. I did tell you this just before I got on here where I was working on a 20L5 that had some problems. So
that was one. Okay, you fixed that.
I just fixed it like 5 minutes ago. So I've got a little video coming on that.
Okay, it's nice.
It was actually something where Save on Pat was like, "This is what's wrong with it," and he was right. This is what's wrong with it. So I was like, "Yes, easy." But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, maybe we'll wrap it up soon.
This is probably a good spot to just like we could talk about more stuff on the next one, unless there's something else you think that.
No, I think it's all good. I got more. We always got more stuff for next time.
Right.
We got next week. So yeah, cool. I'm trying to think. What have I got coming up? The only thing that I'm going to be working on in the next week, I'm waiting for just a few simple components to come in. I'm working on I said you would call it RGBHV to RGBs converter. So the use case is we've both got the GBS units, the GBS control. That's very popular now as a cheap retro scaler. And that unit only outputs RGBHV, so with the horizontal and vertical sync together. And even if you output 240p or 480i or whatever it is, it's always HV. And I had this idea that I'm like, well, I've got the Antonio Villena adapter for Mister. And all that basically is doing is taking RGBs plus 5 volts, true, and then it converts it to composite and S video. And I thought, well, maybe it's going to work on the GBS control. And so what I'm going to do is just make a small VGA dongle, passes through RGB. I'm going to get 5 volts out of the original unit from somewhere, pass that into pin 9, and then just the simple circuitry that you can get from Retro RGB that's been designed by Steve from HD Retrovision. Because if you're trying to combine H and V, you can't just stick 2 wires together and you can't use a Y cable sort of thing. It's a pretty, it's like 4 resistors and 1 transistor. It's not a difficult thing. So I'm just going to put that inside of a dongle, and then it could be GBS control, dongle, Antonio Villena adapter. And then in theory, you've got S video and composite coming out of the GBS control when you're doing your downscaling. So that's, as soon as I get that in, that'll probably be my next video, that little thing. It's not, look, it's no science, rocket science revolution, but it's just a nice little component that I think might help a few people.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was actually going to see what you had. I forgot to even mention that. I had actually started using my GBS control over the last week. One of the things, like I finally beat a game, and you were talking about PlayStation 2. So I was playing PlayStation 2 on my GBS control, and it's the all-in-one unit, and I was using I first was using SCART, and these games, most of them, they only output 480i, so I was getting used to like the output on mine because it outputs HDMI, so I was putting it to my big screen, and so I found that with the 480i that was coming out of either input when I was using the SCART or component would outscale awesome to my TV through 480p, like, through the HDMI out. And then 720p was pretty good too. I just liked 480p more. And then, but 1080 wouldn't work if it was 480i, which was crazy. It would just drop a frame and lose picture sync on my television. And if I got it up to 480p, it would go to 1080p and output 1080p. So I didn't know if, it's such an odd, like, open source piece of machinery still, but I was like, I really did like the way it was handling that 480i and flipping it out to 480p out the HDMI to use on the TV. It was doing really, really good at that. Because I think that's one of the problems with a lot of the games on the PlayStation 2 is they're in 480i.
Right.
And so I know that was kind of interesting. Yeah, I spent a lot of time working with that thing last weekend.
Okay, yeah, me too. Yeah, because I wanted a way to put my PS2 on my VGA monitor because I just have one screen here. So that's really straightforward. I've already got that going. Composite in, VGA out, that's fine. Because if... what was I gonna do? Oh, yes, the other use of this, my little HV to singles to C-Sync adapter, is then I could take the time sleuth, go time sleuth, 240p, HDMI to VGA, then use this, then I'll get 240p composite out of the time sleuth as well. So this little adapter has a second use. So that's going to be the second part of the video, is getting composite out of the time sleuth.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I need to get... that's what I do whenever I see LCD now. I just want to use a time sleuth on it. But yeah, I think there's a lot more to explore with that GBS control. It's kind of interesting because, yeah, you're using one side of it, more of a homebrew end, and I've just got the finished product. And I'm using it, I think, for something kind of different where I'm trying to get HDMI more of a... it's more of like an extremely workable but cheap. I don't know. You could insert your other better version here, whether you say OSSC or RetroTink. It's not going to be nearly as good as that stuff. But it is
less.
good. Like, I don't know. Obviously, like you say, if I'm playing retro games, I'm going to use Mister, and then I can do whatever I want straight out of it, right? But if I'm going to use something that's not available on the Mister right now, and I could go through the component cables or composite cables into the flat screen, but I actually think a lot of these TVs are doing better running through their HDMI ports.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Well,
that's kind of
we've
like
seen
what
that
we've
with
been
our testing.
seeing.
Yeah.
So I feel like, that's like at least opening something new. And again, this product, I can't remember. It was like $120 assembled for me. So, it's right in that price point. And as of we're sitting here, like I hated all the filters, like the little filters that it says were scan line filters. I didn't like any of them. I turned them all off. And then I did
On the Mister.
No. I'm sorry. On the GBS control.
Oh, okay.
So when you go, it sends out a Wi-Fi signal. So you get on a different computer and you pull up the controls. You've done that?
Yep.
Yeah. So when you're in there, there's one of them that select filters, and I didn't like any of them. But there was like an auto gain that would up the brightness. I liked that one. That one worked well. There's also a centering scaling thing. I thought that was very cool. When you're like thinking, it's definitely, there's a definitely top tier product like the RetroTink 5X. It's obviously, it's not the same product. It's like nowhere near it really, because you don't get all the filters, you don't get all the support, you don't get, like you say, we're having to deal with just SCART and component in and maybe RGB through VGA. But overall, it's still a fun tool, I think.
I like it. I think because on the other hand, when I made one myself, I was actually just for my own, just sort of making sure I'd covered all the bases. I was rewatching Voltar's video where he shows how to make one, just to make sure I'd got everything correct. And he quotes about $47 to make it. I want to say, because I know that he would have bought that off Amazon. I got all my shit from AliExpress, and I reckon I screwed that down. Yeah, I waited a month, sure.
Yeah.
But I reckon I screwed that down even further. I reckon I screwed that down maybe even to about $30 or something like that with all the bits. So
See, that's
extremely
incredible.
affordable.
Like, that's way awesome if you do it that direction, and you're only paying $30 or however much. I don't know if that includes. Because, mine's a little bit different. There's probably a couple more pieces. Maybe that's 20 more bucks if you want everything. But I did see where people were selling like these on eBay pre-assembled for like $190. So I feel like that's a bit of a stretch.
It's a bit much. By that stage, you're almost hitting the...
No. You've got...
secondhand OSSC level,
Right.
Secondhand, maybe RetroTink. You could just...
You could still do a RetroTink, whatever it is, the one that's still stocked, that's in between there, that's like that price point.
Yeah, he's still got a few there.
That is like the component and stuff, but yeah. All right.
All right, Steve. We're going to wrap it up. Let's do it. We got people here. Thank you very much for watching. And not just an episode of us talking about what we're doing here. Look forward to next week. Steve, good luck with your videos this week.
You too, Lewis. Thank you.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye. And record. Yes.